Fuzzy Mud by Louis Sachar, Chapter 36, Snow. 2 days later, the first snow fell. Timea still couldn't make out the individual snowflakes, but she was able to see zigzagging streaks of gray and white outside her hospital window. It was beautiful. The whole world looked beautiful to her, even the bright green jello that came with her lunch, with coleslaw magically suspended inside. Rhonda led her onto the outdoor patio next to the cafeteria. Wearing a ski hat over her closely cropped hair, she lay on the cement and caught snowflakes with her tongue. It snowed for 4 straight days. Timea learned that Marshall had begun getting Dr. Crumbly's injections, and that he was showing great improvement. Nobody seemed to know anything about Chad, and she was afraid to push it, afraid what she might find out. Her doctor gave her large black frame glasses that were too big for her face. Seeing him clearly for the first time, she nearly fainted. With soft brown eyes and curly hair, he was even cuter than Mr. Franks. "I get all flustered and tongue-tied when he looks at me," she told Monica over the phone. "It's a good thing I didn't know what he looked like before. Everyone would have thought I had all kinds of horrible side effects. I probably would have forgotten my own name." Monica laughed. "You don't sound so scared anymore," Timea noticed. "I know. I think it's all the snow. I know the mud's still there underneath, but everything just seems safer, and I'm just so happy you're almost all better." Timea could hear a crack in her best friend's voice. It sounded like she was crying. Timea started to cry too. Then they both laughed at the fact that they were crying. They stayed on the phone a while longer, crying and laughing at the same time. One day in late December, Timea's doctor was checking her pulse while she was watching television. A TV set hung from the ceiling in this corner of her hospital room. She could feel her heart rate quicken at his touch. She hoped it didn't throw off his measurements. Her TV program was interrupted by a breaking news story from Heathcliff, Pennsylvania. Her doctor let go of her wrist and picked up the remote. He raised the volume. A man was standing in the back of Woodridge Academy near the edge of the woods. He was surrounded by news reporters. The bar across the bottom of her TV identified him as Dr. Peter Smythe, Deputy Director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. It felt odd watching something on TV that was happening right at her school. Snow was falling outside her hospital window, and she could see it falling on the man on TV. Timea thought he looked more like a lumberjack than a doctor. He had a thick bushy beard and held a shovel. The man dug his shovel through the snow and then, with his bare hand, reached down and pulled out a big glob of black goo. "Fuzzy Mud," he said. Ice crystals stuck to his beard, and Timea could see his frozen breath as he spoke. "I'm holding in my hand more than 1 billion of your so-called frankengerms." Timea felt all tingly again, watching him hold the mud just like she had once held it. "And I'm happy to report that every last one of them is dead," the man said. "The organisms cannot survive sub-freezing temperatures." Timea and her doctor looked at each other. Could this really be true? Several of the reporters applauded, and Timea could hear cheers coming from other rooms in the hospital. "Does this mean the crisis is over?" a reporter asked. Before Dr. Smythe answered, the bar at the bottom of the TV screen had already proclaimed, "Crisis over! Frankengerms all dead!" Timea wondered how they could know for sure. Maybe the frankengerms were just hibernating, like bears. "How do you know they're not simply lying dormant?" a reporter asked, almost as if she were channeling Timea's thoughts. "How do you know they won't wake up again when the weather turns warmer?" "We've examined them in our labs. I've personally looked through a microscope and seen the disintegrated membranes. I assure you, they will not wake up." Still, Timea wondered, how could they know they were all dead? Maybe somewhere beneath all that snow there was one that was still alive. Of course, the CDC will continue to monitor the situation, Dr. Smythe said. Although extremely unlikely, it is possible that another mutation could have occurred. Somewhere out there, there may be one mutated organism capable of surviving the freezing cold. We'll know more after the snow melts. 2 times 1 equals 2. Chapter 37, Thursday, December 30th. The quarantine was lifted. Under the direction of the National Institutes of Health, Dr. Crumbly's cure was mass-produced. It successfully treated more than 60,000 people and animals afflicted with the Dilwadi blister rash, the now official name of that particular medical condition. Medical books were being updated with before and after photos of Timea Dilwadi's skin. 2 weeks after being discharged, Timea and Marshall returned to the hospital, this time as visitors. Timea brought jars of homemade strawberry jam, belated Christmas presents for her doctor and the nurses. Marshall carried a plastic food container. Timea still wore glasses, but Monica had given her new ones for Christmas. The frames were neon green and semi-transparent. Monica told her they were très chic, French for very stylish. Timea's hair had begun to grow back. She wore a pink cap over what she called her fuzzy head. She had some scars on her hand and arm, which her doctor said would fade. There was a pockmark on her face, which her friend Summer insisted only made her prettier. In order to be perfect, every woman needs an imperfection, Summer had told her. This sounded like an oxymoron to Timea, but it was still nice to hear. After Timea gave the strawberry jam to Rhonda, Rhonda said she had something for her, too. She handed her a flat box. Timea opened it to find a new school sweater. How did you know? She couldn't remember ever telling Rhonda about the sweater. You shouldn't have. This is way too expensive. It's not from me, Rhonda explained. The box arrived here for you yesterday. I've been trying to figure out how to get it to you. Timea discovered a small card which read, "For a girl of extraordinary virtue and valor." It was signed, "Your friend Fitzy." "Who's Fitzy?" Marshall asked, reading over her shoulder. "I thought I dreamed him," Timea answered, mystified. "Good thing I didn't ask for a piano." "What?" asked Marshall. Chad Hillegas was one of the few rash patients still in the hospital. The skin on his face had been so badly damaged, he had been put in a ward usually reserved for severe burn victims. The door opened as Timea knocked. "Hello?" she said as she entered. Marshall was no longer with her. Chad was sitting up in bed wearing green striped pajamas. A ray of sunlight shone through the window, highlighting a shaft of dust particles and casting a glare across his heavily scarred face. He wore a pair of the hospital-issued black frame glasses. Timea was happy to see the glasses. If he'd been blind, there would have been no need for them. "Timea," he said. She was afraid he might hate her again because of what she'd done to him, but he was glad to see her. "Hi, Chad." She set down her sweater box, then stuck her hands into the back pockets of her jeans. "How are you doing?" "I'm not supposed to move my mouth too much," he said, keeping his face noticeably still as he spoke. "They had to take skin from another part of my body and put it on my face." "Oh," said Timea. "You still look like you," she assured. "Just calling me butt face," he said. She was shocked. "You mean they—" She covered her mouth with her hands. "At least you think it's funny instead of being all mad and everything." "Nothing makes me mad," he said. "It's weird. Ever since I could see again, the world just looks a lot better than it did before." "I know what you mean," Timea agreed. "Everything's beautiful." "I hope it lasts," said Chad. "Me too," said Timea. She wasn't sure if Chad meant he hoped the world lasts or if he hoped it continues to look beautiful. Either way, she agreed with him. The door pushed farther open as Marshall backed his way into the room. He turned around, holding a tray with 3 plates of lasagna. The nurses let me use the microwave. Happy birthday! Exclaimed Timea. Chad didn't say anything. He stared at the food, then looked from Marshall to Timea and back to Marshall. He's not supposed to talk, Timea told Marshall, then quietly whispered, his butt was transplanted onto his face. Chad pulled back his covers, then slowly slid down from the bed. He stepped toward Marshall, who set down the tray and nervously backed away. It might have been all the talk about Frankengerms, but with his scarred and rigid face and his now outstretched arms, Timea thought Chad looked a little bit like the Frankenstein monster. Marshall backed up against the wall. Chad clasped Marshall by the shoulders, pulled him close, and hugged him. Thanks, man, Chad said. Marshall twisted free. It was Timea's idea. Timea laughed at Marshall's awkwardness. She wondered why boys were always so weird about hugging, but then her heart stopped when Chad's eyes fixed on her. He opened his arms wide and said the same 3 words he'd said to her once before. You're next, Timea. Chapter 38. Courage, Humility, and Grace. The following testimony is excerpted from the transcript of the Heathcliff disaster hearings. Senator Haltings. So when you returned to the woods to look for Chad, did you see more of the mud? Timea Dilwadi. Yes, just about everywhere I looked. But there could have been more of it the first day too. I just didn't know to look for it then. Senator Wright. Please speak directly into the microphone, Timea. We're having trouble hearing you. Timea Dilwadi. Sorry, I said the first time I went into the woods, I didn't know about the fuzzy mud, so I wasn't looking for it. All I could think about was wanting to get out of there. Senator Haltings. Because it was against the rules to go into the woods? Timea Dilwadi. But I wasn't allowed to walk home alone either. Senator Haltings. Hobson's choice. Timea Dilwadi. I don't know what that is. Senator Haltings. Hobson's choice. It's when you have to choose between 2 options and they're both bad. Timea Dilwadi. Yes, they were both bad. Senator Wright. Well, Timea, speaking on behalf of this committee, we are very glad you chose to follow Marshall into the woods. The 2 of you may have saved the world. Timea Dilwadi. But everyone got the rash because of me. Senator Wright. No, from everything the scientists told us, that would have happened anyway, maybe a week or 2 later, and by then it would have been too late to contain it. Senator Haltings. The quarantine wouldn't have been in place. Someone could have stepped in the fuzzy mud, gotten on a plane, and flown to Los Angeles, or Paris, or Hong Kong. We could have had a worldwide epidemic, and in places where the temperature never drops below freezing. Senator Wright. Thanks to you, Marshall and Chad, the country got an early warning. Senator Haltings. You're a very brave young lady, Timea. Timea Dilwadi. I wasn't brave. I was scared. Marshall's the brave one. Senator Foote. So how does it feel to have a disease named after you? Timea Dilwadi. It's a great honor, I guess.